Good evening and welcome to NewsNight. This evening we'll have all your international, national, and local Pittsburgh news. Find out what country is working to reduce the work week. Also, we'll have more information about a controversial decision. We'll also have your weekly Pittsburgh weather report. All of this and more coming up on NewsNight. Denmark is currently taking extra measures to fight off the Omicron variant of COVID-19, which is currently doing more damage to the country than they have seen with COVID-19 to date. Denmark responded to COVID-19 relative to other countries pretty effectively. However, Omicron hit them into a dangerous territory, the likes of which Denmark hasn't seen in terms of COVID. 90% of the country's 1.44 million total reported cases of COVID have been recent Omicron cases. That's nearly a quarter of Denmark's population who has been exposed to Omicron. In the midst of this small in size country's COVID crisis, they've decided to take swift and decisive action. There are some extra regulations being put in place, including a maximum limit of 500 people into indoor venues and for bars to close at 11 p.m. Most notably in terms of Denmark's response to the Omicron outburst is their offer of a fourth dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Danish Health Minister Magnus Heunicke described this as a, quote, new chapter in taking on the virus. A fourth dose of the vaccine will be offered to Denmark's most vulnerable citizens who received their third shot last fall. Denmark is one of the first countries to step up to the plate to offer a fourth dose, along with Israel and Chile. Heunicke hopes that Denmark can continue to handle the pandemic effectively and lead the way in offering a fourth vaccine dose on the global stage. The fourth dose has so far been given out to very few people in Israel, and as far as side effects are concerned, the shot seems to be very similar to the original booster shot, potentially causing mild head and muscle aches. Only time will tell if the rest of the world follows suit in offering this dose. Having a 3-day weekend off work without a cut in pay could soon become a reality for more employees, as about 30 companies in the United Kingdom are taking part in a 6-month trial to test a 4-day work week. This program, starting in June of 2022, will see firms having staff work 32 hours per week without affecting their benefits and pay. Joe Ryle, director of the 4-day week campaign in the UK, said in an interview that, quote, moving to a 4-day week could be a win for companies. Studies have shown that productivity improves along with corresponding gains in workers' well-being. The trial is being run by a 4-day week Global, a nonprofit that advocates for the shorter work week, with research on the pilot program conducted by Cambridge and Oxford Universities and Boston College. Scientists have been working to calculate how close the world is to nuclear war. As the newest version of this doomsday clock for 2022 is released, the world allegedly inches closer and closer to midnight. NewsNight reporter Nick Konopka has more details about this menacing announcement.
100 seconds to midnight is how close the world is to ending, according to the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. This determination comes as the Bulletin releases its doomsday clock for 2022. The clock is meant to symbolize how close the world is to nuclear war, and this 100-second mark is the closest the clock has ever been to midnight. The board of scientists who determine the time contribute the dire situation to, quote, nuclear weapons, climate change, disruptive technologies, and COVID-19, end quote. Nuclear weapons have always been a focus of the doomsday clock since its conception in 1947, following the first and only use of them during World War II. However, climate change and disruptive technologies are more recent additions. The bulletin says that significant action has not been taken by major countries to combat climate change and disarm their nuclear arsenals. This is why they warn we are closer than ever to doomsday. With this dire warning, the panel of scientists released a series of recommendations to prevent catastrophe. Their main focus is on world leaders who they implore to use their power to limit nuclear arms and take the necessary steps to prevent the next pandemic. However, they also recommend that private companies divest from fossil fuels and in favor of more renewable sources of energy. These steps are taken, the bulletin hopes that we can turn back the clock for the first time in over a decade.
Scientists believe that much of the Earth's surface is still yet to be discovered in the depths of the ocean. However, a new project has begun to try and survey these areas that have been untouched and undisturbed. Reporter Addie Deal has all the information.
What started as an underwater mapping project soon turned into this discovery of a coral reef completely untouched by climate change. This reef stretches nearly 2 miles off the coast of the French Polynesian island Tahiti and bears a strong resemblance to a bed of roses. The reef was hidden between 30 meters, 100 feet, and 100 meters, approximately 328 feet, a zone scientists refer to as the mesophotic zone. This particular area of the ocean allows algae that is needed by the reef to continue to grow. However, there is very low light penetration. This area of the reef is speculated to be the key to its pristine condition, seeing as reefs in shallower parts of the ocean are more liable to the destruction from humans and climate change. Once discovered, scientists returned on January 20th to photograph and observe this reef on a mission called Ocean One, which is sponsored by UNESCO and CRIOB, both research laboratories specializing in the study of coral reefs, as well as the French National Center for Scientific Research.
Coming up after the break, we'll dive into your national news, like which well-known politician is facing COVID-19, as well as what drastic new measures one mom took to avoid masking her child. Stay tuned.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, and welcome back to NewsNight. Of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen rating.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more?
All this and more
All this and more coming up on NewsNight.
coming up on NewsNight.
Coming up on NewsNight.
The U.S. is currently facing the economic battle of the global semiconductor shortage. Semiconductor chips are necessary for the production of many technological goods, most prominently, but not limited to, smartphones, cars, and equipment for hospitals. On Friday, January 21st, President Biden spoke on the matter, urging Congress to pass legislation to address this global supply chain issue here in the U.S. The president is calling for an increase of research and development for semiconductors, along with extra manufacturing. The domestic drawbacks to this shortage are a large factor to the U.S.'s current inflation issue. With prices for automobiles and other high-maintenance electronics rising, automobiles in particular account for 1/3 of all total annual price increases. Biden has made it clear that he wants the U.S. to invest much more in semiconductor research and development, which currently accounts for less than 1% of America's gross domestic product. Defending his stance, Biden remarked that semiconductors, quote, power virtually everything in our lives. At the end of the day, this is about national security, economic security, and it's about jobs. In terms of where chip manufacturing is moving heading forward, the government has invested $80 billion over the course of the next 4 years in companies such as Samsung and Texas Instruments. Biden wants to further expand on these projects, indicating that he wants to pass another infrastructure bill with semiconductor spending being the primary focus. And he's hopefully able to get such a bill passed with bipartisan support. Local TV news reporter Tori Yorgi was struck by a car during a live broadcast on Wednesday, January 19th. This happened during her last week of her current job at WSAZ-TV in Huntington, West Virginia. As she is set to begin at Pittsburgh's WTAE-TV in February, Yorgi was reporting on a water main break in Dunbar, West Virginia, when a vehicle sideswiped her. You could hear her say off camera, "Oh my gosh, I just got hit by a car, but I'm okay, Tim." Anchor Tim checked on her, unsure of what had happened, later asking where the car had hit her. "I don't even know, Tim. My whole life just flashed before my eyes," she responded. The vehicle's driver stopped to make sure she was okay, but Yorgi assured her that she was fine. She had no major injuries. The next night, Yorgi tweeted that she was, quote, "feeling fine, just a little sore." 4 people were found dead after a smuggling attempt gone wrong. Now, both U.S. and Canadian authorities are getting involved with the case. Reporter Aaron Yutt has more.
4 people, including 2 adults, a teen, and an infant, have been found frozen to death about 40 feet from the U.S.-Canada border while being smuggled into North Dakota, according to U.S. and Canadian authorities. U.S. Customs and Border Protection and law enforcement officers with the Department of Homeland Security performed a traffic stop on Wednesday, January 19th on a 15-passenger van about 1 mile from the border when they found 2 undocumented Indian nationals from Canada inside, according to the Manitoba Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Less than a quarter mile from the border, law enforcement encountered and apprehended 5 additional undocumented Indian nationals that walked across from the U.S. border from Manitoba, Canada, according to the RCMP. One of the travelers who was taken into custody was carrying a backpack containing children's items such as clothes, diapers, and toys, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. He told authorities he was carrying the backpack for a family that was traveling with their group but got separated from them as they traveled to the border during the night. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, coordinating with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, began a search on both sides of the border for the additional travelers where they found bodies of 4 individuals on the Canadian side of the border in Manitoba. The adult male, adult female, teen male, and infant were found, quote, frozen, according to the Canadian authorities, and are believed to have died due to the exposure. The Department of Justice said, according to the group of travelers, the border crossing took an estimated 11 hours. 2 of the travelers were transported to the hospital with injuries. The low temperature in Emerson, Manitoba dipped to minus 13 degrees on that Wednesday. Steve Shand, 47, a U.S. citizen from Florida who was driving the van, was arrested by U.S. Border Patrol and charged with 1 count of knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien had come to or entered or remained in the U.S. in violation of the law, having transported and moved or having attempted to transport and move such aliens, according to the Department of Justice. Shand made his first appearance in court on Thursday, January 20th, and is due back in court on January 24th. An autopsy will be conducted to determine the cause of death of the victims. The 4 travelers who died have yet to be identified. The Mounted Police said it plans to continue to search for any additional people who may have illegally been crossing the border.
As of 8 a.m. on Friday, January 21st, a federal hotline has been launched to obtain free COVID tests. The hotline was created in response to the persistent Omicron variant, allowing at-home testing kits to be available to those without internet access. All you need to provide is your name and home address. No payment method or health insurance is needed. You can call the hotline every day from 8 a.m. to midnight at 800-232-0233. The hotline provides services in over 150 languages, and each household can request up to 4 testing kits. The hotline also aims to emphasize priority to communities with the highest infection rates. 20% of tests will be allocated to these zip codes with the highest cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. The National COVID Test Hotline is one more step towards providing the community accessibility to testing. In the past, we've talked about a man avoiding the vaccine with a prosthetic arm, and we've also touched on schools taking their school board meeting online to prevent anti-mask rallies. However, a woman in Virginia went to new lengths to prevent her child from having to wear a mask. Addie Deal has all the details.
A woman from Page County, Virginia, has been charged after threatening her child's school board concerning the mask protocol. Amelia King, 42, was attending Page County Public Schools board meeting concerning the mask protocol on Thursday, January 20th, when the threat was made. King said, after being cut off at the end of her 3-minute comment period, quote, "All right, no mask mandates. My children will not come to school on Monday with the mask on. That's not happening, and I will bring every single gun loaded and ready," end quote. King was arrested Friday for making an oral threat on school ground, but was released later that day on a $5,000 bond. King later released a statement saying, quote, "I in no way meant to imply all guns loaded as in actual firearms, but rather all resources I can muster to make sure that my children get to attend school without masks. I sincerely apologize for my poor choice in words," end quote. Chief of Luray Police Department said that her words, quote, "absolutely caused public alarm," and that local authorities are investigating the incident.
Former vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin tested positive for COVID before her defamation trial against the New York Times was set to start. This is the second time that she has caught the virus, saying in March 2021 that she had been diagnosed with coronavirus. The federal judge postponed the trial on Monday, January 24th, saying that Palin was, quote, "of course unvaccinated." The civil lawsuit was from Palin against the Times for allegedly damaging her reputation by suggesting that an ad produced by Palin's Political Action Committee led to shooting of former Representative Gabby Giffords. The trial is set to now start February 3rd. And coming up after the break, we'll have your local news, like what major company is causing trouble in the Pittsburgh region, and Craig Frakowski is back this week to give you more of your weekly Pittsburgh weather report. We'll be right back. It seems that the city of Pittsburgh will be greeted by an unlikely guest. President Biden will be making his rounds to the Steel City for the second time in his presidency to discuss infrastructure and manufacturing on Friday. While there's no information as of now on what location Biden will be speaking at, we do know the reason he's coming to our city. The White House spoke on his decision to come to Pittsburgh, saying that his intentions are to, quote, discuss strengthening the nation's supply chains, revitalizing American manufacturing, creating good-paying union jobs, and building a better America, including through the bipartisan infrastructure law. This isn't the first time that Biden visited Pittsburgh, as he also stopped by in March, where he actually initially pitched his infrastructure goals for the first time. Allegheny County is currently preparing for the visit. The mayor of Pittsburgh, Ed Gainey, and Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, met to discuss what opportunities Pittsburgh has with new infrastructure funding. Fitzgerald and Gainey believe that Biden's infrastructure plan will bring a hefty amount of economic growth to Pittsburgh, with more money for bridges, $850 million for the Lock and Dam project, the extension of East Busway, and plenty of new manufacturing jobs. I suppose it makes sense that the Steel City is the cornerstone for Biden's infrastructure announcements. A new Amazon warehouse is stirring up trouble in Churchill. The warehouse has been opposed by council members and activists since its approval last year. Nick Konopka has more.
After approving of an Amazon warehouse last December, the Churchill Borough Council is being challenged in court for their decision. Churchill Futures, a local group that was fiercely against the warehouse, filed an appeal to the Allegheny Court of Common Pleas on Friday. The appeal intends to nullify the votes of 3 council members who the group says were biased in favor of the warehouse prior to hearing public comment. If Churchill Futures wins the case, that would retroactively place the council's vote at a tie, effectively blocking the construction of the warehouse. This court appeal is a last-ditch effort by the activists who have been fighting to block the plant since its proposal last year. Kathy Bordner, a member of Churchill Futures, has raised over $38,000 since last June through a GoFundMe page to help with legal fees. Those against the plant claim that the Amazon warehouse will create vast amounts of traffic, noise, as well as air and light pollution, which will harm the town of 3,000. Hillwood Development, the company slated to construct the warehouse, assured the Borough Council that the operations would be safe and up to code. With the reports by Hillwood Development and the strong support for the plant by local leaders, Churchill Futures is facing an uphill battle for the ensuing legal fight. After a fatal shooting right here in Pittsburgh, the search is on for those responsible for the murder of a 15-year-old boy. Aaron Yutt has more information on this developing case.
The search for suspects responsible for the shooting death of a 15-year-old student outside of a Pittsburgh school continues. This comes after the student was shot outside Oliver Citywide Academy on the north side on Wednesday, January 20th. According to the reports, 2 suspects walked up to a school van at dismissal and opened fire, a spokesperson for Pittsburgh Public Schools said. The 15-year-old student, later identified as Marquise Campbell, was shot in the chest, police said. He was taken to the hospital where police said that he died. All students were brought inside the building and the school was placed on lockdown as a precaution, Pittsburgh Public Schools said. Police said the students inside were not believed to be in any danger. The school reopened around 3:20 p.m. and began to dismiss the students before 4 p.m. It is unclear what the relationship is between the 2 suspects and Campbell, police said, but it is believed that he was directly targeted. According to investigators, Campbell and the driver were the only ones inside the van. The bus driver was upset but uninjured and cooperating with police, investigators said. KDKA was able to talk with some of Campbell's family, who were upset that some of them were not allowed inside Allegheny General Hospital to say goodbye because of the COVID-19 protocols. Police are searching for the 2 suspects, and the only description that they could provide was that they were wearing masks and dark clothes and appeared to be younger. Because of the shooting, the school learned remotely until Monday, a spokesperson said. There was a heavy presence outside the school before investigators began to clear the scene when the school reopened. One person was initially detained, but police said that that person was not related to the shooting and was released. Investigators know which way the suspects ran after the shooting, and they are now looking at video footage.
Temperatures have been continuing to drop as we get closer to February. Craig Frakowski has more on what you can expect to see from Pittsburgh's weather this week.
Thanks, Carlo. Let's start with today's forecast. The high for today is going to be 31 degrees. The skies are going to be looking mostly cloudy with a small chance for flurries. The low for today is going to be 24 degrees. Overnight, there's a 43% chance of precipitation, so there is going to be some snow showers, unfortunately. This week isn't going to warm up too much. Let's take a look at the forecast. This week, the high is going to be Wednesday of 45 degrees. However, that day is going to be rainy, so we can't enjoy that summer weather just yet. The only other day that we have a chance to de-thaw this week is Tuesday's high of 43 degrees. The lowest temperature this week will be Saturday evening's 1 degree low. Luckily, we won't see any rain until Wednesday into Thursday of next week. That's all I have for you this week. Back to you, Carlo.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Newsnight. If you want to see more, check out our social media pages on both Facebook and Instagram at UView Television. You can also check out more episodes on our YouTube channel or our website, uview.pointpark.edu. I'm Carlo Andreassi, and from everyone here at Newsnight, thank you for watching and have a great evening.